Hello, hello. It's Let's Talk Tuesday, so let's talk a little bit about disability, identity, and language. I want to preface my thoughts on this by saying that every single individual on this planet can identify differently, and that's okay. We should all try and make efforts to ask individuals how they would like to be referred to instead of assuming, and respecting that and using the language that honors them. One's identity is not typically up for debate, so just be respectful of how someone wishes to be addressed. So, person first versus identity first language. There are people who identify as person first, i.e., person with a disability, and there are people who identify as identity first, i.e., disabled person. There are quite a few people who use person first based on the idea that they are people first and that disability is secondary or a trait. Personally, I identify as identity first because my identities and my communities are a huge part of who I am and how I move through the world and how I experience my life. So I am honored by their recognition. I am a queer, Latinx, disabled woman. These identities vary throughout this humongous and diverse community. So while there are a lot of people who identify as autistic, there are also a lot of people who will identify as a person with autism. There's also people who identify as quadriplegic, while there are people who identify as a person with quadriplegia, and so on. Even in my specific corner of the community, there are people with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and there are EDSers. There are people who are wheelchair bound, and there are wheelchair users, of which I personally prefer the latter, because wheelchair bound has this negative connotation to it, like bound or trapped, limited, which is actually the complete opposite of the function of a wheelchair. Without it, I'm essentially homebound, bedbound. But with it, I gain freedom, mobility privilege. For many, including myself, that's also an economic privilege. With a power chair, I gain independence. So, wheelchair user, not wheelchair bound. I personally identify with identity first, but I'm not offended by person first language. I think that might actually be the safest approach when referring to large groups, like people with disabilities. But I don't know, feel free to let me know your thoughts on that. But I feel like person first might be less likely to ruffle some feathers. But I don't know. What I do know is that if you are writing anything or introducing someone as an individual, you should ask them specifically how they identify and be respectful to that language. Now, disability versus the plethora of words created to replace that word. Alright, so disability is not a bad word, even if society tried to make it into one. Hashtag disabled, not Voldemort. Hashtag say the word disabled. I personally, when being referred to, I cannot stand terms like differently abled, because specifically differently abled, I feel like it's such a big cop-out. Like, everyone has different abilities. Everyone is differently abled. It erases the oppression that people within the disability community face. Then stuff like special and handicapped and handy-capable, I do not like any of them, but only recently, this year, did I learn that handicapped itself is actually considered a slur. I didn't know that. I think the word disability is important. I think it's important to recognize and remember that there is a specific community of people that have historically been oppressed and continue to be oppressed to this day. And I think it's important for that community of people to have the word disability and have the word disabled and to be able to have disability pride and be proud and be out in the world as disabled. Alright, I think that's all I have for now. There are some really cool pieces on this topic that I will link for you in the description. And please, I would love it if we could discuss this topic a little more in the comments. Let me know how you personally identify and why, and if you think there is, a specific, safe approach when it comes to groups. Like I said, I think that people first language in regards to large groups might be the safe approach, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think, and I will see you eventually. Bye.